Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to How We'd Book It, the wrestling podcast where we book either wrestlers, events, whatever. We give you our opinions on how we'd book them. And today, notice that Jason's not here, but I have a very special guest with me from the BICBP radio network, the host of many different podcasts, and one of the best podcasters I've ever met, Matt Johnson.
You're buttering me up. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm good. I was like, I want to talk about Jon Huber, but, who do I talk about that with? Jason's, he couldn't be on this episode today, and I was like, Matt was friends with him. And we did that one tribute show to him. Let's have him on and talk about how we'd book him if he hadn't passed. And unfortunately, give a little backstory. Jon Huber passed almost a year ago. It was at the end of December, and so I thought this would be the perfect time to talk about how we'd book him. I mean, I guess, when was his last match? It was sometime in November, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think he was just randomly out away for like a month or two beforehand. So in November, late October sounds about right.
No, it was late October because I went to Full Gear last year. Actually, that popped up on my memories. It was like, I was in Jacksonville, Florida. That was a terrible experience, except for the wrestling show. I'll talk about that on the stream later today that I'm doing. I guess you won't. I forget how podcast works, so this will be out later. So the stream will already been out.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, no, it sucks because it's like, today I'm doing this, and then the podcast doesn't come out for a week, and they're like, oh, he did that today? What?
Yeah, you got to line up your stuff. It's like booking WCW in the 90s, man. It's all over the place.
Fair enough. But so we will be booking Jon Huber, Mr. Brodie Lee, the leader of the Dark Order. We did that tribute show, like I said, and it was nice to talk about him, but like, that was one of the most shocking things in wrestling I've ever seen. Like, I was about to do a live stream during his passing, and I was like, he had just started a live stream. I looked on my phone, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's still hard to kind of imagine all that. It's still very hard to that it is real. Just recently, not too long ago, they did a guy out of Rochester did a Brodie Lee documentary, and they did a one-night release at a movie theater, and I got to interview him beforehand about it, and it brought back a ton of just a lot of memories, a lot of memories. It was cool, and I got to talk about my experiences with him, but it was just cool that people still haven't forgotten. You know what I mean? In a good way, that they're still putting, they're still paying tribute to Brodie, even all these months later, almost a year later, still taking good care of his family. And, it's been a bright spot for AEW as far as how they've handled it. And I do got to give them a lot of kudos, right? Because, I mean, the way that they handle it is the reason why CM Punk is back right now. It's a reason why a lot of these guys who've been around and seen some of the shit in the big time pro wrestling industry are like, okay, there's something different about this place. So I want to see what this place is all about.
Yeah, because nobody knew he was sick. Nobody knew, except for people in the locker room. And if it had been WWE, it would have been out on the dirt sheets the day of.
They would have made a storyline about it or something. It's just, it gets horrible. Yeah, the Roman Reigns leukemia one still makes me sick, and it's like, what would they have done about Brodie? This is not something to take lightly, any of it. No. So, horrible, just gross stuff. And AEW has been pure class since they've been around. So kudos to them.
Yeah, they've really taken care of his family, Amanda, his son, Brodie Lee Jr., and it's pretty cool to see what they're doing with the Dark Order. They're his boys and his girl Anna Jay. Before his passing, they were mid card at best, but now they're hanging with Hangman. They're hanging with the Elite, and they're getting a good push out of a bad situation.
Right. Yeah, they've been relevant. I don't. It's hard to keep. There's so much wrestling that goes on nowadays. It's hard to keep up, but. They're keeping them relevant, and that's an important thing. I always see their name popping up. They are getting big time matches still, and they didn't just disband the group in Brodie's, after Brodie's passing, which is an important thing. It's a little unprecedented. It's happened before, but The fact that they keep the Dark Order going, they pay tribute to Brodie as often as they do. They let little Brodie kind of participate whenever he can, and it's a cool way to honor his legacy. It really is.
Yeah, they just recently had that show in Rochester, which, you know, for people who don't know, he was originally supposed to debut in Rochester, which is his hometown. And
Correct.
They paid tribute to him after the show. They let little Brodie come out, and they let the Dark Order come out, and Amanda, and it was overall a good vibes and a good way to pay tribute to him. I think that they needed to do that in Rochester, is pay tribute to him.
100% agreed, because you know what I mean. Them doing the tribute show that they did in December, that could have been it, and I think people would have been happy. But the fact that they legit dedicated another episode to Brodie in Rochester just shows how much he meant to everybody, and like how crazy is that, right?
Yeah.
WWE would never ever do something like that, ever. No. It's happened dozens of, these occurrences have happened dozens of times, and they don't do it. They don't televise it. They don't air it. And I mean, how special was that for the people of Rochester that they got to witness that? That was special for them. Because like you said, Brodie was supposed to debut. It got pushed off due to COVID, and then he never got to wrestle in AEW in Rochester. And that was, his they put a rocket ship to his back as soon as he got in there, and he never got to do that. And that's like, it's one of those great what ifs, I think, in pro wrestling right now, is if he would have been around to debut in Rochester. How crazy would that have been? Because they don't do WWE hasn't really done a whole lot of televised shows out of Rochester over the last 5 years or so, and that's when Brodie was, he was there. He was around. They did a lot of house shows, but they very rarely, if ever, do a televised taping. So yeah, this is that would have been a cool opportunity for him to have.
I agree, and the one cool thing about this show is we're gonna pay tribute to Brodie, and we're gonna say how we would book him. So I guess the best place to start would be after the dog collar match, which turned out to be his last match, but I'll let you go first since you are the guest. How would you have booked Brodie's return? Because he did take that month off before his passing. What would you have done? Like, would it be a world title match? Would you have booked him in the scene, or just Dark Order push? Or
I think you got to build him up again. And against specifically who, I'm not sure, but he does that. The month off was obviously due to his health. And it would have been obviously amazing if that didn't happen, but. You got to build him up again. You got to build him up again and just re-push him and just re-dominate. I'm not saying having him go out there and just burying dudes and you know what I mean, just kind of putting jobbers out and just destroying people, but I could have definitely seen a lot more usage of just a bigger, more important usage of Dark Order. I think almost NWO like, where they legit just have their and you know what I mean. I definitely think that it's not too hard to picture Brodie, I think, within the last year at least, challenging for the heavyweight title.
Yeah.
I will give AEW a lot of credit. They have done a good job of not just hodgepodge and hot potatoing, is the correct term. That championship, I think they've only had 3 champions since, right? It's been Jericho, Mox, and Omega. So. But I definitely would have seen him as still as a main event player, which is really neat. To have him up there instead of just kind of floating around on the mid card. He obviously is in charge of the biggest faction in AEW right now, if I'm not mistaken. So, it's important to keep him as relevant as you possibly can.
No, I totally agree with you. I think that keeping him relevant is one of the biggest things they would have had to do, because after losing to Cody like that, like, it was a great match, don't get me wrong, but they would have had to build him back up, be like, oh, he is a credible threat. Cody was just better on that one day. It could have gone either way.
Correct.
So I think, like,
Cody's not even really around, is he?
Do what?
Cody's not even really around anymore much, is he?
So that's hard. It depends on the month. Like, he's sometimes there, sometimes not. I know he's feuding with, like, Malachi Black, and I don't really get the hate for him. Like, going off on a side tangent real quick, everybody's hating on Cody Rhodes, and it's like, like, okay, but like he's putting people over. Like, yes, he has to get his win back, like, and he has to win sometimes, but like for the most part, he's put Andrade, he's put Malachi, he's put all these people over, and people were like, oh, he just wants the world title. I'm like, he hasn't even had the world title. He has that stipulation where he can't challenge for the world title. So I just don't get the hate for him.
Right. No, I mean, it's crazy, right? A couple years ago, everybody was just super. Cody was like every indie fan's wet dream, right?
Yeah.
The international wrestling community's wet dream, and now how quick they turn on you, right? He's an instrumental part of getting AEW going, right? I mean, and I'm not mistaken in that. And he books himself in a couple feuds, puts on some stellar matches, and all of a sudden people can't stand him.
Yeah, I don't get it. I mean, I honestly, let's be real though. I do think heel Cody is better.
I like heel Cody. I definitely like heel Cody. Babyface, it's babyface Cody's too white meat babyface in my opinion.
It worked for his dad, not him.
Correct, and that's the era that we're in now. Is that, listen, if you're a plain old good old boy babyface, it just does not work in this generation. It doesn't.
No.
It's all about the anti-hero.
Yeah, which Malachi Black has done pretty well. And Brodie Lee, I think Brodie Lee could have been that anti-hero. He could have been. Like, I don't think he, like, once you position him in that role, I think he could have done great as, like, the anti-hero. Like, oh, he's still a bad guy, but he's also done some good, No,
for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's one of those little tweener things that just people like to get behind. Because I remember when Cody was starting up AEW and people were asking about I think because they do a really good job of speaking to the press and all that stuff. And people were inquiring about the heel and face, and they're like, yeah, the lines are kind of blurred now, or there's really not, it's really not so cut and dry as it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah,
which is interesting. Not. Which is an interesting fact. It's true. Stone Cold Steve Austin changed that for a lot of people, and now the lines are blurred, right? Good old boy baby faces just don't work anymore. They don't. It's beyond that. So Cody's kind of flip flopped a little bit. So but it's a little confusing at the same time too.
Yeah, and like. Cody, as like I said, as a heel was pretty damn good, but like honestly, I think his best feud as a face was against Brodie Lee. They put on some hella matches. It was great with Cody before that putting the TNT title up for grabs every week as a TV title, and then I think Brodie was the one who beat him for it eventually. And then, it just you really wanted to get behind Cody because you really didn't like Brodie Lee. Like, this is before his passing, just because of the faction and the cult leader type thing and the promos he were cutting. They were great, but don't get me wrong, he was doing his job. He was a heel.
Yeah, he did it in a traditional sense. He was a cool heel, but there's, it did add some sympathy to. It did give some sympathy to Cody. Mm-hmm. Which was a very nice touch, a very nice touch. But yeah, it's so hard too because Brodie's heel stuff was so funny. The backstage stuff that he do, where he's slapping people with papers. He had the papers, and he'd be slapping people with it. So it got him over a little bit. It was just funny stuff, but. Brodie did do a good job of getting Cody over as a babyface. And then kind of after that, Cody kind of started to fall into this period where we just really don't know what he is, right? I think he got the face tattoo after that, which is really peculiar, and he just got real. Yeah, he just fell flat a little bit. But again, I still like him. I was huge when Cody got in the Indies and was starting to do everything. I liked him before they started messing with his character in WWE, before they made him Stardust. I loved Cody Rhodes with the face mask.
Oh yeah, that was some of his best work. I even loved Dashing Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
And then when he teamed with Goldust and his dad to take on the Shield, that was prime Cody. But on the Indies, Cody was when he was cutting promos in Ring of Honor, you were just like, yikes. Like when somebody said, Kenny, I think Kenny had said that he was a failed product of WWE. He's like, I might have been a failed product of WWE, but you were a failed product of their developmental system. I was like, God.
Yeah.
Like, he still has that heat.
I was backstage when him and Goldust won the tag titles too. So that was pretty neat. That was a fun time to be able to see that. But yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, it's kind of true. The WWE is not the place of creative freedom anymore. It really isn't. The guys are legitimately walking on eggshells. If they go off script and they do something, yeah, they can get in trouble. They can get in a lot of trouble. It's too organized now.
Mm-hmm.
It's too organized now. And Cody, like you see all these guys, they leave the E right now. They get, we just had a bunch of big layoffs, and there's gonna be stars coming out of it. There's gonna be some dogs.
You're good.
There's gonna be some stars coming out of that batch of releases.
Oh, yeah.
And there always is. There's always somebody who gets released in one of these big time releases and becomes something bigger. I mean, Jesus, Zack Ryder, I know he's not really on TV right now. He did like a little stunt with AEW.
He's on Impact.
Is he?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? I don't even see it, but I know him from his GCW stuff right now. More so.
That's pretty big.
Yeah. So you know what I mean? So, but these guys are finding ways to be relevant. Where WWE, they handpick. It's such a hot mess right now. It's so bad. You hear about teams with 30 writers. It's like 30 writers. How is anybody going to agree on anything? How do you produce television like that? And unfortunately, a lot of the best talent, the best people who can work good matches are, they're relegated to crap storylines, crap bookings, crap matches, crap spots on the card. It happens all the time. It happens all the time, and it's shameful. Like WWE is and I don't want to make this a shot on WWE, but type episode. But it's not a place where people can go and live their dreams, I guess. I mean, Brodie's a perfect example of that.
Yeah. Brodie, as soon as he got released, he went to AEW, and to be fair, his best work in his career was in AEW. The little 8 months he was there.
Hands down. He'd never been, I think, more relevant as a wrestler, as a character in wrestling. Never been more relevant. And, we talked about it on the tribute episode, just how many lives he touched. I mean, that dude can do no wrong. He was just happy to be out there. Like, that was what it mattered to him. Like, he loved WWE. He grew up with WWE, like a lot of people did. But when he got there, he realized it wasn't what it used to be. And AEW legit gave him this opportunity to be, to show off his creative side, to be who, to be the performer that he wanted to be and what he envisioned. And they did a really good job letting him do that. And listen, there's no, maybe he would be, there's a, like I said, he has heavyweight title, the build, the look, the character, and there's no doubt that at some point, he could be heavyweight champion.
So who would you have liked to have seen him against if he hadn't passed? Like, who would you have liked to see him feud with after the whole Cody thing was done?
Let's see. I mean, obviously, like right now, I'd love to see him and Punk go at it again. I'd love to see him and Daniel Bryan go at it again. But I don't think Punk happens if this whole thing with Brodie doesn't happen. That's the whole thing right now with that. But I would like to see him Jesus, there's so many guys he can go, toe to toe with. I'd love to somehow see, Brodie and Jericho go at it. There's literally, he can, the good thing about Brodie is that he can have a good match with everybody. Mm-hmm. And I know that AEW has a pretty bloated roster right now.
They do.
But it's there's guys who so-and-so is all elite, and then you don't see him on TV ever. But you know what I mean? There's so many good matches in there for him. He would make an interesting match out of just about anybody on that roster. I'd love to see him go up against a little crossover with Christian. I know Christian's an Impact right now. He's right. He's still one of their champions.
No, that partnership actually ended.
It?
So
it did.
Christian lost to Josh Alexander at Bound for Glory, and then Moose cashed in whatever he had won for a world title match. But I know you're pretty familiar with Daniel Garcia. Would you have liked to seen a match between Brodie Lee and Daniel Garcia?
Um, I think it would have worked. I think it would have worked. What Garcia lacks in size and stuff, he has in technique. And it was really cool to see CM Punk put him over, but not at the same time. He gave him a lot of stuff to do when Garcia wasn't even signed, and they wrestled a couple Fridays ago. But I think it would have been interesting. It would have been interesting. I know Brodie would have given him a lot to kind of be a superstar, but as far like if we're talking Meltzer ratings here, I don't know how. Just the size difference was too much, but yeah. But yeah, there's some definite intrigue there from something like that.
I feel you. Yeah, it some of the people on the roster now he could have had a knockdown drag out brawl with. It's insane. I think the biggest thing I would have wanted to see, like, if he hadn't passed, obviously the stuff with Hangman and the Dark Order wouldn't have happened, but they planted the seeds before his passing with Hangman about joining the Dark Order, and I would have loved to see a feud between Hangman and Brodie.
Yeah, that could have been something. I think that was kind of a little bit of an indie dream match, right? Hangman was killing on the indies, and Brodie released. You just want to see those guys kind of interact. Who knows? I think they might have wrestled before. I honestly don't know, but that definitely could have been something pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think that maybe doing a storyline with Hangman and Brodie and have them maybe somehow win the tag team belts and then have to go back and forth and whatnot. That would have been pretty cool to see them feud. Who's the real leader of the Dark Order? Who are they really going to follow?
That could have been an angle at some point. There's no doubt about that. If they wanted to do that, if there was any interest in splitting them up, doing a kind of a face heel thing, and even if they wanted to turn Brodie, face at some point, that would have been an interesting angle. But excuse me. But there's so much that a lot of mismatches, especially with the way that AEW has grown, right? Like now people are saying that the WWE is in trouble with how good AEW is, and it's like, I wish Brodie was part of that.
Yeah, it's just so sad because he was with the company when it was smaller. Like, yes, they had Jericho and they had Moxley, but like those were the two biggest names they had. He was arguably the third biggest name they had. And now you have Punk, you have Daniel Bryan, you have all these former WWE guys. For God's sakes, you got Big Show, Mark Henry, Christian. Like, those are big names. And to see him maybe do something with, I would have loved to see him versus Christian, because by the time he was in WWE, Christian was on his way out.
Correct.
They might have wrestled a few times, but it wasn't anything that because they could have had a 5-star match. Maybe put the TNT title back on Brodie and then had Christian feud with him. I love Christian. I love Brodie. I think that would have been match of the year candidate.
For sure. Oh, I highly agree. And I think that's the one thing that, he wanted to be able to show off too, was that he could wrestle. He wasn't just this big brooding character who goes out and does a few moves and does this. He can go. And I think we all seen it. One of my favorite matches of Brodie's is it's the 6-man tag with the Wyatts and the Shield back in 2014. No way out, or Elimination Chamber, whichever the
Elimination Chamber. I think it was. I think it was called the one right before WrestleMania.
Yeah, they messed with the February names so many times, but I know, right? But that was one of my favorite ones where you can actually see him do what he can do. This dude can jump through the ropes, right? He's doing he's diving through the ropes, and that's just what he wanted to show off that he can do. He was a big man that can go. I wrestled Brodie and I took a hurricanrana from him at one point. It was one of the craziest things I've ever experienced. This dude, as big as he was, as massive as he was, he could fly around like a lightweight, and he just wanted the opportunity to show that, so he could, so he can cement kind of his legacy and keep making money. And I know that the indie style right now is a lot of high flying stuff, a lot of quick, crazy technical stuff, and you look at Brodie and you don't think that, but he could do it, and that's what made him dangerous in the ring. And I think that's why the extra sting on all this is that, he can't. We know he belongs, but the general population, of course, who's never seen those little maneuvers, they don't know. They don't know.
I really do think Brodie could have been AEW's version of the Undertaker, not like the whole character wise, but like the presence. You know, he could have been as big as the Undertaker for AEW. Like obviously the gimmicks are different, but it's close enough to where, you know, it could have worked out that way, and he could have been, you know, Mr. All in or All Out or Full Gear or whatever. You know, he could have done so many things, and I think that's what sucks about this whole situation, because like his last match in WWE, like one of his last feuds, was with Daniel Bryan, because Bryan called him up, was like, bro, I know you're under contract, you just want to come wrestle me? Like, he called him because Brodie was like, dude, I don't want to go back to WWE. He asked for his release, and that's what sucks too. He asked for his release like, I think like 9 months before he got it.
Correct. Yeah, they kept denying him because they knew if he got loose, he was going to be a star. And finally, his contract just they let his contract be granted, or his contract ending. You know, they just kind of let it go. But they were, from what I understand, they were trying to sign him for a ton of money that he had never seen before to not wrestle. Like, that's one of those fishy, weird things. Like, you stay here, we're not gonna use you, but we're gonna throw a ton of money at you.
Yeah, to just not go to AEW, because they knew what he would become.
Correct. And you know what I mean? Like, especially with the way that the world shaped up last year, right? The pandemic, COVID-19. You know damn well that if that was the case, he would have been one of those casualties. At least over the last year. Right? I mean, Jesus, they just let go of Braun Strowman after signing him to a massive deal. You think they would have thought twice about cutting Brodie? So yeah, he knew he had to get out of there. He did the right thing, and you know, he made the right move. He made the right move.
Oh, he definitely did. I mean, like, he wasn't a huge star in WWE. Like, of course, he was with the Wyatt, but hell, they released Bray Wyatt. So it's like, you think they wouldn't have released Luke Harper too? You know, it I don't know. That's what bothers me about WWE. And going off on another side tangent, because you were in the wrestling business, you still interact with the people in there. My biggest issue with the whole Bray Wyatt, Karrion Kross, and Keith Lee thing is the whole thing that came out that they were difficult to work with. You know, it's like, I guess some people could have said the same with Brodie when he asked for his release, but like, you know, is it really being difficult to work with when you want to do good for your character?
Correct. And
it doesn't make sense.
Right. You know, that's what WWE is. They're a fall in line, and you know, and that's been the mentality for the longest time. We're the biggest name in sports entertainment. There was no competition until AEW really stepped their game up. And you know, if you don't like it, too bad. You can go work, you know, all over the country on the independent level and pay for your own travel. Or
you can go to Japan.
Right. You know, have fun with that. That's been their mentality, and you know, and that's what's killing pro wrestling, I think, for WWE. That's like shooting themselves in the foot. I know so many people who have dropped off from watching that product, like completely. I have no idea who the champions are. I have no idea what goes on. I don't follow it at all, because it's just how boring and terrible the booking has been. It's abysmal. It's abysmal.
Yeah, and then the whole NXT was the best thing they had, and then they rebooted that NXT 2.0 because Vince was pissed because they didn't beat AEW. Of course they're not going to beat AEW. Like, I'm sorry that you have, like, cool, you have Adam Cole, who is a big star, don't get me wrong, but AEW had Jericho, they had Moxley, they had Kenny Omega, and they had these big dream matches. You're not going to beat them. You beat them one time, and that was it. So, I don't know.
And they kept pulling stars away. That's another thing, too, with NXT. You kept pulling stars away. You openly, I mean, granted, we knew it was a developer, as a feeder for the main roster, but you pull all these stars. NXT was the best in, like, 2013, 2014, when Kevin Owens was there, Sami Zayn,
Finn Balor.
Like, that roster was insane. Like, NXT shows were better than... they were just way better than the main brand ones.
And Vince was getting pissed about it.
Yeah. And then, you leave them with table scraps. And again, the way that you elect to book and utilize these talents is still so cookie cutter. Of course they're not going to beat at AEW. Of course. You know what I mean? And I couldn't name you one single person on the NXT roster right now. I honestly couldn't. And, that's a problem when your characters aren't mainstream, when nobody knows who who's on your roster. And again, granted, I know it's a developmental thing, but it's Yeah, it's like, it's like that one meme where the guy shoots somebody and then it's like, oh, how could they do this? Or you know what I mean? How could so and so do this? And it's like it's literally just them shooting themselves
Yeah.
the entire time.
Yeah, Vince McMahon shooting himself because he doesn't like the fact that NXT was more over than the main roster. But when you're putting on, like, and then having Karrion Kross lose on his Raw debut when he had the NXT title to Jeff Hardy, like, what? Like, I love Hardy, don't get me wrong, but it's like this man had been losing to like Austin Theory and people, and you just have him beat Karrion Kross in 2 minutes. You're NXT champion.
Yeah.
After he
way
blew
to
through
show
everybody.
Right. Way to show how the level of difference between your roster, between your rosters. Way to shit on your champion, basically. And now Cross is released, obviously. So, right? Yeah, he's been one of the cuts. So, and so good for him. You know, it's another missed opportunity. I mean, they let Adam Cole slip through their fingers, for Christ's sake, and it's terrible. I'm glad. I'm glad that the establishment of WWE is really getting tested and challenged right now, because it was never going to get any better until somebody like AEW stepped up.
Because it was never going to be Ring of Honor, and it was never going to be Impact, because they didn't have the money or the passion behind them to be that big. But now you have people leaving WWE to go to AEW, and Brodie was one of the first people, and Brodie and Moxley were the first people to do it.
They were. They were. Even like, I mean, Jericho's got to be given a lot of credit too. I mean, we thought he was a WWE lifer.
That's what he said. And then he was like, "Yo, I got to talking to Tony, and it's just like, it was so much better. It was like, bro, like I have creative freedom. What? I can say what I want. I don't have to read this script. What?"
Yeah, I watched when I was backstage. I was a little blown away by the way that WWE operated things. It's like a movie production company. Like, everybody has papers or tablets with lines on them. They get emailed like what they're supposed to say, and if they screw up, they have to cut. All right, and action. It's legit what they do. This is 2013. I can only imagine how bad it is now. They made it a movie production, and wrestlers don't like that. They don't want to feel like that. They want to speak from the heart. They want to wrestle from the heart. You know, the extensive breakdowns of their matches. They legit go through everything. Like, on the independent level, you're calling stuff beforehand, but you're also thinking a little bit on the fly.
Yeah.
In WWE, a lot of that stuff is kind of just broken down for you, like, beforehand, with agents who are like, you're gonna do this, 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 and this at certain points. And I'm just like, this isn't wrestling. How is it? What is it? What is this? Like, this isn't pro wrestling.
Yeah, no, it's not, and I don't even know what to call it. It's sports entertainment. That's what it is. It's not wrestling. And AEW is now the standard bearer for a wrestling company. And, you know, you got to see wrestlers wrestle in AEW. Moxley, Brodie Lee, like, this is the company they go to wrestle. And they have great matches, and they have great promos because it comes from them, not a writer sitting behind a table like, oh, this would sound good in a movie.
Kevin Dunn, Jim Cornette's favorite WWE employee, Kevin Dunn, who's a legit movie producer. Yep.
Did you have you seen anything about Moxley's book?
I've seen a couple excerpts, and yeah, he's not a big fan of Kevin Dunn.
Yeah, wrote a whole page on saying fuck Kevin Dunn.
Yeah, a lot of people do, because he's an asshole. From everybody has said that. I even I listened to Bruce Pritchard's thing, and Snoop Dogg's that once called him an asshole or something like that, or punked him out. They were doing some some show thing, and they sent Kevin Dunn to help film it or help organize it and produce it, and Snoop Dogg didn't like him. That's how he is. It's crap.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not organic at all.
No, and you could tell, and that's what made Brodie's character from WWE to AEW so different. Obviously, you know, with the Wyatt family, like, Brodie was smart, and he didn't have a Southern accent. Like, he was a Northerner. He was from New York, and you're trying to pass him off as this like crazy guy from the Bayou and with the Southern accent. I'm like, bro, he's not gonna be able to do a Southern accent. Like, he just can't.
No, it's not one of those things you can just kind of make up, and if you do make it up, you can't keep it up 24/7.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah, no, and what WWE should have done with him is after, like, I agree bringing him in the way he did, because you have to have a start somewhere.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah, with the Wyatt family, I loved him. But after he broke away from the Wyatt family, have him become the Brodie Lee character, the smart, intelligent monster that he was in AEW, and he would have been a world champion within WWE. Hell, he could have surpassed the Bray Wyatt character.
You see some of the guys that they put the heavyweight title on nowadays too, and it's like he outworks those guys all day, every day. He makes it look easy too. You know what I mean? I would dare say, I'll go as far as saying that Brodie, and this is personal bias aside, Brodie was a way better character, wrestler, entertainer than Roman Reigns was. You never ever heard Brodie as Luke Harper booed because they just could not stand who he was.
Yeah,
as a performer. Never heard that. You know what I mean? That's something that could have been done. Like I said, you give him just a little bit of a build up, a little bit of a push, and you would be surprised, right? They gave him the IC title for like a week.
Yeah, he beat, I think, Ziggler, and then Ziggler beat it a couple weeks later. Like, what was the point, bro? Like, I'm glad he won the title, and his name will be in history forever.
Right.
But what was the point if he's not going to have a monster title reign? He was a monster of a man who could move like a cruiserweight. You had a star with him, and AEW proved that. If he was still alive today, I guarantee he would have been world champion by now.
Yeah. I certainly want to believe it. I do, because that's all he ever wanted. When we were talking before he got signed, he wants to be able to prove that he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. And when he was in WWE, he acknowledged, hey, like, I'm not getting that opportunity. It's too political. It's too much this, it's too much that. And AEW was that spot for him.
Yeah, and then his I know a big thing for him before he passed, like one of the things in his contract was that he was going to be able to work in New Japan once everything opened back up. And with all this Forbidden Door stuff being open, can you imagine the matches he would have with some of the people in the Bullet Club or in New Japan?
They loved him in Japan. He went there many a time. I think he had a couple, like, I want to say at least half a dozen to a dozen tours over in Japan. And he was a huge star over there. They loved having Brodie in. But yeah, I mean, IWGP and just all that crossover stuff. Even there's some, obviously, I think there would have been some interesting matches with the AEW Impact crossover. Yeah. Like there's a lot of potential good for there. And like I said, he just, in this day and age, the archaic WWE schedule is so demoralizing. It's so bad. They literally just abuse these wrestlers. They do. And of course, people are going to act differently when they're put on top, right? When they're superstars, right? Look at Braun Strowman. He was taking shots at people, complaining about the indie wrestling cuts like a year ago, and now he's on the other side and he's not super happy about it. But it's like it's one of those things where a guy like John Cena or a guy like Roman Reigns right now are gonna be like, yeah, WWE's the best because they're paying them to be the best. They're putting the rocket ship to them, but they don't think of what it's like to be the other guy, the guys lower on the card who are literally doing all that they can, but just can't seem to get any backing when it comes to the bookers. So it's a horrible workplace. Like, there's a part of me, like, I'm glad I'm away from wrestling because of that, that sense. Like, I used to think, like, man, WWE's the be all end all, and
yeah.
And it's not. It's hard. It's hard on families. You're on the road 300 days a year. You pretty typically, like, that's a tough life. That's a tough life. AEW gives them. You come in, you film your stuff down in Jacksonville. You go home. You can go do whatever you want. It's not Jacksonville anymore. They travel, but they don't really do house shows.
The only thing they do is they tape at Universal Studios for I believe it's Dark.
Yeah,
and then they work what four Wednesdays a month, and Wednesdays a month, and then one Saturday every few months, and some of them are doing media and stuff. And I mean, I'm sure that's optional, but it's like they're not doing house shows. Which, let's be real, that the days of the house show for a big company like that are dead.
Oh yeah, the attendance is horrible right now for WWE for house shows. There's no interest in them because one, nothing meaningful is going to happen.
Exactly.
Right? You know that if you get a title match at a house show, and I seen it before, and it made me mad. I was like, really? Like, this is what they're selling us? It was right before WrestleMania 21, and John Cena and JBL were going at it, and it was for the WWE Championship. And you just knew. You're like, okay, they're not going to change the title here.
No.
So, you know what I mean? So it kind of it really defeats the purpose of a house show, that nothing good is going to happen. Then yeah, the art of the house show is dead, and these guys are doing most of their stuff on house shows, and it's terrible. It's that well, some of them, they hate TV. When I was backstage for WWE, a lot of them hated TV but liked the house shows. But they did say that the house shows were a little crazy. So yeah, it depends on who you ask.
I mean, I can understand that, but like, my thing is, they're beating up their bodies for what? Like, a wrestler has a bump card, and there's only so many bumps you can take in your life, and it's like you're wasting them on house shows.
Right? Yeah, you certainly did. I can't tell you. I used to read the dirt sheets when I cared a bunch, and guys were getting hurt like on house shows, banged up on house shows. For what? For a crowd of 1,000 people, 2,000 people? Like, you're not selling out arenas on house shows. It's just
no.
That's how it is. It's what the business has led to. The business model has led to. So it was kind of silly. No point to it. Give the guys a break. Let them do their TV, and then let them be humans. I think WWE would be a much healthier workplace if it was a lot more open like that.
Yeah, a lot more discussion, people being able to do what they want, eliminating house shows, just make it a fun environment, because that's why people left. That's why people went to AEW. And I mean, I think Bryan and Cole are the best examples of people just leaving, not getting released, just leaving and going to AEW.
Right, because they're trying to dictate their wrestling careers. It's like, no, I'm good to go. I know what I can do, and you're not using me the way that I deserve to be. So, piss off. I have a story. I don't know if I've told you this one before. So when I was backstage with WWE, I sat Monday Night Raw was in Pittsburgh, and I sat next to Brodie Lee, aka Tyrus. He's in a couple other gimmicks, the Funkasaurus, essentially.
Yeah. He's on Fox News now as a consultant.
Yes, yeah, he's a very smart man, very intelligent man, very well spoken. But I'd sit there and I listened to, I was listening to him talk, and he was just so bitter. I'm like, how are you bitter? You have one of this happiest gimmicks. You're over. He goes, he's like, there's a lot that goes on here that a lot of people don't know. I'm like, well, talk to me. Like, I know I'm just an indie dude, but I care. And he was telling me that at WrestleMania that year, the March, April prior, him and Tensai were supposed to have a Viscera spot as a tag team match that got pulled. Right,
I remember that because they were supposed to team with the Funkadactyls versus somebody else, and it got pushed to Raw.
Yes, he was supposed to be. This was going to be his time to shine. WrestleMania payday finally, and they were standing at the curtain when they said, "Hey, we're sorry. You're not going out there tonight," because CM Punk and Undertaker went long. You know what I mean? And can you imagine like how that feels? Like, as a human being, screw the wrestler part. As a human being, you're about to go out there and wrestle in front of 60, 70,000 people. WrestleMania, what everybody who's ever grown up watching pro wrestling dreams about either attending or being a part of. And at the curtain, right before you're allegedly supposed to go out, they rip it from you. I don't want to work at a place like that.
No.
And this was sick. This was September. No, this is October of 2011. No, it wasn't 2011. 2013. So that's probably 6-7 months after WrestleMania, and it was still bothering him as a human being. He goes, it pissed me off. He goes, I don't want to be. I lost my mind, and it's that's the humans. That's the stuff that people don't get to see.
Yeah, they think, oh, these are just wrestlers. They don't care. No, the problem with WWE especially is they do care. The wrestlers do care. That's why they became wrestlers. They want that creative freedom. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying how the wrestlers, they probably hate the writers, because how are you going to have someone write for you when you were the most one invested in this character? And that goes back to Bray Wyatt and Karrion Kross and Keith Lee being difficult to work with. Like, yes, they're going to get mad about that stuff because it's their character, but how are you going to tell them, oh, well, you need to do this, and then just pull it away from them at the last second because somebody ran long? It's not like you don't have the time for WrestleMania.
Right. Yeah. It's a 7-8 hour show essentially.
Yeah.
You could, and you just took this away from these people, these wrestlers. It's messed up. It's a toxic environment that it deserves everything bad that's coming their way.
Yeah, and
I can assure you that.
At this point, I get really, like, I know you don't watch current wrestling like much anymore. You'll keep up with AEW occasionally, but like the best time I have had watching wrestling is with my friends watching AEW. We're going to it's an AEW show, not this Dynamite, but next Dynamite. It's in Norfolk, Virginia. It's the Dynamite after Full Gear, and it's a Rampage taping too in Dark Elevation, and I'm hoping Hangman Page wins the title, but like there's 9 or 10 of us going. We would have never done that with a WWE show, 9 or 10. Everybody like, nah, fuck that.
Right. Yeah, it's not worth my time. We know we're just going to end up sad and disappointed at the end. Yep.
But with
100%.
With AEW, like that's my biggest thing though, is like I wish I had gotten seen Brodie wrestle live. Like I don't think I ever did. I'd have to go back and see the events I went to, but I don't remember seeing him wrestle live.
Right, which is, it's a shame. It's a treat that a lot of people just did not get to experience, unfortunately. And it was something. It was cool to see him, in your local fire hall, when I was on shows with him, and then it was really cool to see him in a big old arena. So, yeah, it's a damn shame.
So if you had like a number one dream match, it doesn't have to be an AEW, but if you had a number one guy you would have liked to seen Brodie wrestle, who would it have been?
Oh, man. I probably really wanted to see him go up against Bray Wyatt. And I think with the way that they were using him in WWE, that it would only be a matter of time in AEW if they were to go about bringing him in. We never got that. Right? They teased it.
Yeah.
They teased it. Brodie wrestled a number one contenders match against Randy Orton, and Randy Orton won to go on to WrestleMania to face Bray. But I really think emotionally that would be a main event match for a lot of people. And it would be a good match too, because we know that both those guys know how to work, and people know the history between the two. But just emotionally, just fans of the sport and the human emotion side of things, how cool would that have been to see Brodie and Bray Wyatt, Wyndham Rotunda, looking at each other across the ring, knowing that these were two of the most mishandled superstars in WWE history over the last decade. And be like, okay, look how far we've come.
Would you have wanted to see that in WWE or AEW?
AEW firsthand. They would have given him 5 minutes in WWE. I can assure you, it would give him a quick 5 minutes, bing, bing, and then controlled the emotion of the match. Just controlled every aspect of it. So, yeah, it would have to have been in AEW for, you know what I mean? Obviously, he wouldn't be Bray Wyatt at that point, but you would just know. You would just know that what we were seeing was, it was Luke Harper versus Bray Wyatt, even though they'd be under different names.
No, I totally agree. I think that could have been one of the best feuds of all time if they had done it right, which AEW, they've done a lot of things right. I'll get they have done some things wrong, but I think with this, with having Bray Wyatt's hand in it and Brodie Lee's hand in it, they wouldn't have gotten it wrong.
No, they probably would. I mean, again, you have two great creative minds. I mean, you think that Firefly Funhouse was an idea of WWE? No, there was nobody doing that. That is a brainchild of Wyndham Rotunda, and he made that thing as interesting and as he possibly could.
The best thing on the show.
Absolutely was.
And then I think the moment they ruined the Fiend was when he got beat by Goldberg. That was done. Actually, no, hold up. When he got they disqualified Seth Rollins in a Hell in a Cell match.
Yeah, that was stupid.
Yeah, it was dumb.
I think we did Harley Kayfabe like the following Wednesday or Tuesday, and we talked about just how stupid it was and didn't make sense. And it's like, man, you really just buried. You basically stated that you don't trust Bray as your champion or whatever. It was one of those things like, okay, if he loses, yeah, he's going to go down, but also, but if he wins, it's going to be really good for him and the character. And they didn't do it. They failed to pull the trigger. And yeah, just another complete miscue. I would just like to be a fly on the wall in those booking meetings who decide that stuff.
Yeah, Vince McMahon eating his steak. That's good shit.
Like, I mean, if you really think about it, it's like they legit do stuff to like piss fans off because they think it extends storylines, but it's not like that anymore. Wrestling is so, it's an open door to the backstage area right now. That's a big psychology difference between now and back then. Back in the 80s, the 70s, you could piss fans off and they're going to buy tickets to come back because they're invested, they're interested in the storytelling. Now everybody knows kind of what the business is like, and WWE will literally screw over a live crowd in some city just to and make them so disinterested in their product just to keep a storyline going. It's honestly baffling. How many times have you've been watching a Raw main event and the ending would be ending in disqualification?
Mm-hmm.
I stopped watching wrestling when that happened. There was a long stretch of time where I think it was like 2010, 2011 where I just like I can't do this anymore. John Cena would win a match by disqualification like every week for a 2-month period. I'm like, are you serious? Like, this isn't even good booking. Like, give the people a satisfying ending. It's awful, and you just can't do it that way. And AEW's been really good about about giving people. Yeah, they don't care about losing clean. Guys losing clean. They don't care about that, as long as it's a good match and people go home happy.
Yeah, I think AEW is AEW and Tony Khan especially. You got to give Tony credit because without Tony, there is no AEW. They're doing a lot of things right here, and I think if they continue, they'll eventually beat WWE as the number one wrestling company in the world. But it's going to take a little while. And, they might be there faster if Brodie was still around.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely would have helped tremendously. They had a nice anchor with him. And it's sad to see it's sad when you think about what didn't transpire.
Yeah, it's upsetting. So, guys, I think that's how we're going to close the episode because this is a fun episode, and I don't want to get too down, but Brodie Lee, rest in peace, one of the best big men, or not just big men, the best human in wrestling history. Matt, I want to thank you for coming on How We'd Book It. It was fun talking to you about the exalted one, Brodie Lee.
Oh, dude, thanks for having me on. I know I don't have a lot to offer in a lot of other avenues in wrestling, but I will never hesitate to take a chance to talk about Brodie and give him some props. So thank you for that. Thank you for that opportunity.
Yep, I appreciate you coming on. Matt, where can they find you? Where can they check you out?
Oh, geez. Hold on to something. No, I'm not going to name drop every single one of my podcasts. I have a million, but I will put over our wonderful network that is just full of just so many amazing, creative-minded people. I can't say enough how many shows that we have are just so different. There's legitimately I know we use it as a tagline sometimes, but there's legitimately a podcast for everybody on our network. Whether you like food, whether you like music, movies, sports, and everything in between, there's legitimately something for everybody on our network. So please do not hesitate. Go support. Go check out our podcasters. Go check out our podcasts. BICBP-radio.com. You can find all of our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google Play, and beyond. Do not hesitate. Everybody's hardworking. Everybody puts a lot of time and effort in their shows to, not only just get things off their chest, but entertain you, the listeners, at the same time. So please give them your time and energy. I would appreciate it.
Yes, do that, because all the podcasts are amazing. They're great listens, guys. But you can find me. I will be at a I don't know when this episode's coming out, so I got to figure that out. But November 13th, I will be at a United Elite Wrestling show here in Richmond, Virginia. I will have a table if you want some wrestling figures. I got mostly AEW figures, so come by. Come check it out. If you want to see me at Virginia Comic-Con, VA Comic-Con, November 20th, I will be there as well. I will have my own table with a banner. And if you want to see me at I don't even know the name of the promotion, but I will be at a wrestling show on the 28th as well. My November is very busy. But Wednesday, November 17th, I will be at Norfolk, Virginia for AEW Dynamite and Rampage taping. So I want to see you there. And I appreciate everybody listening. But guys, as far as Brodie Lee, Jason's not here to see it or say it, so I guess it's my job. That's how we'd book it.